Well, hello there and welcome to Travels with Geordie. If this is your first visit, my name is Peter Knowles and I live on this classic wooden motor cruiser, mostly, along with the loving memory of my pup Geordie here in Victoria, British Columbia, all the while fixing it and others up for some pretty ambitious cruising. If that's the sort of thing you might find interesting, please consider sticking around and subscribing. I'd love to have you. This episode is a bit all over the place. Regular viewers will know that last week I wasn't able to upload an episode, and you probably realize that is because I don't have a vehicle for the meantime. And there's been some advancement on that and some advancement on other things. How about we just jump right in and I can explain things as we go along? If you weren't in the live stream last week or happened to notice in my little teaser on Instagram, the Land Rover had a catastrophic driveline failure coming over the Malahat, in other words driving over the mountain range back up here the other day. And well, when I mean catastrophic, a horrible crunching sound from the transfer case. Now I believe it's the transfer case because it seems like it's coming from there, but we're all going to find out together right now what's really wrong. And that's really very simple. All I have to do is put you underneath the truck and point at the drive shaft, and when I put in gear and listen to the grinding, if the drive shaft spins, well, the problem is actually the rear differential, which by the way is also not a simple fix. If the drive shaft does not spin, the problem is in the transfer case. Pretty simple stuff. Let's have a look. Well folks, this is one of those interesting cases where you know before I do. I have to stop the camera now, watch the clip, and find out if it's spun or not, because it really sounds... Anyway, hang on a sec. Haha, okay, so it's the rear end. Now, I can't tell you right off if that's good news and bad news. Those of you who are Rover enthusiasts will recognize that the rear axle in my truck is actually a military Salisbury unit, which is really relatively rare, and the ring and pinions in them are very, very, very rare. Worse yet, it has an ARB air locker in it, which hopefully hasn't been damaged in whatever the heck has just gone on. I'm guessing ring and pinion. Ugh. But what that does mean is that I have no more ability to drive anywhere. Lady Zephyrs does have a small car which she'll loan me now and then, but I can't be commuting back and forth from here in Victoria up to Genoa to work on MV Geordie in it because she needs it to go to work, etc. So I've been a bit marooned. Not that I haven't had lots of things to do, but they're not necessarily all that interesting for the rest of you. So back to the truck for a little bit. Okay, it's the rear differential. It has chewed up the ring and pinion. In differential world, that's the big ball in the middle of the rear axle of a car, and it converts the energy coming from the transmission from the engine to the two wheels on the side, and it does that through a bunch of gears. In fact, there's some other magic in there for going around corners. But anyway, the main gear is a ring and pinion, which is quite a sophisticated set of gears, and in my case quite a very expensive and rare set of gears, and on my Land Rover they're trashed. Now the axle in my Land Rover is a relatively heavy-duty 1-ton military version that did not come with my Land Rover. I was able to procure that another way, and it's quite a nice piece which should not have suffered with the loads I've given it. Some of you will know I've towed some pretty heavy trailers all over North America, but that still shouldn't have done it. So something has gone wrong. As I mentioned, it's an exotic gear set, and they fetch quite a lot of money if you can find one at all. The center section of the Salisbury gear differential on a Land Rover is actually a Dana 60, an American Dana 60 axle. And the reason that is because the British military had been using Land Rovers for many years, but were a little disappointed with the rear axles busting all the time, the original Rover rear axles. So Land Rover came up with a plan. Let's put an American differential in it and solve that problem forever, which worked out pretty well, except they're relatively rare in series vehicles. In other words, Land Rovers that were built with leaf springs, which require the older 4.7-to-1 ratio gear ring and pinion. Anyway, too much of that. The truck also has a ARB air locking differential in the rear, which is not necessarily related to that ring and pinion set, but it does mean there's a lot going on in there, and I've already invested a lot of money in this axle, so I will be fixing it. However, I won't be doing it that soon. What am I going to do about that? Well, I have basically two main options. One is to buy a car, which is not that simple because I don't have any money and it's just complicated. Two is to remove the two half shafts out of the rear axle and remove the propeller shaft, put the truck in four-wheel drive, which will effectively give me a front-wheel drive Land Rover. The gears and the differential will be completely unaffected because they won't be turning at all. So even though they're broken, they can just sit there until I can afford both the time and the money to do something about it. Not sure which I'm going to do or what I'm going to do. More on that in upcoming episodes. It's not that relevant for a few weeks because by the time you watch this episode, I will be in Boston, Massachusetts visiting my lovely daughter, Caitlin, which I've been looking forward to for a long time. And in fact, the week after that, I will be in Nova Scotia visiting my other lovely daughter, Erin, both of which longtime viewers of the show have seen before. So there will be some content from that trip, and that's what the next few episodes will be about. But this episode, we're now going to jump into Pome and look after a few projects that I've been doing and am yet to do this week, namely, most importantly, get the freshwater leaks out of her because it's been raining a lot lately, and to get a water system in it so, well, I can wash the dishes and things like that. Anyway, let's dive in. Okay, so I talked a little bit about fixing up some leaks in the intro, and I'm not going to dwell on it too long because some of the work was slightly shoddy. At this time of year, sometimes you're sort of in a panic mode because the #1 cause of damage to wooden boats is fresh water getting into the top. Never mind how incredibly annoying it is for the living aboard element of wooden boat lifestyle. Anyway, keep the fresh water out of your boat, keep the varnish up to date, and these boats will last a long time. Fail on either of those fronts and it'll break your heart. Now, just to be fair to poor old Pome, there weren't very many leaks because I did a pretty good job sealing everything up when I redid the cabin size, but there's always one or two. One of them happened to be over my pillow. All right then, so any of you who have seen Pome in the water have seen that she sits a little heavy in the bow, and I think I have explained that that is because she has way more ground tackle than the boat was originally intended. It has a rather large lead weighted anchor, as well as a large bow roller, 300 feet of galvanized 5/16 chain, and a rather massive windlass. So that's really what's causing all this, and it hasn't really bothered me that much. But now that a couple of thousand people a day walk right by here, I'm just sort of curious to see if removing the ground tackle would make that much difference. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put it all on the bottom of the harbor and see what that does. Well, I can't say the boat is now level, but it's vastly improved. A little bit of tankage in the stern, and I think we'll be in good shape. Not that I'm going to leave it in the water, but I've just learned something. That's all we're doing. All right. You can see by where the hull is wet, she came up about 2.5, maybe 3 inches even. And so the other thing I talked about doing this week was a water system. After all, washing my dishes and brushing my teeth like this are getting a little old. Not that this hasn't worked just fine. Now, if you've been watching a while, you'll know that the sink is already plumbed to the outside world. In fact, this is not the sink I'm going to end up using in the long run, but it's here and it works and I'm all set. I have a tap, I have a hot water heater, which is almost brand new, that Lloyd bought for the boat, and a water tank, an accumulator, and a water pump, which is also almost brand new. So that's all going to go just fine. The problem is all that work is going to have to happen underneath the bed. Please excuse the laundry, it's also laundry day. I could take the whole bed apart, including all the bedding, and stuff it somewhere, well, up there, I suppose. But I'd really rather not do that, especially because it might not finish today, and I do want to be able to sleep on it tonight. So I'm going to do all this work by crawling under the bed, which I'm not going to enjoy, and you certainly wouldn't. So it's not all that interesting a project anyway. Basically, I'm going to run through it, show you a bit, let you know when it's done. Now, to be fair, this is actually a bathroom faucet that I bought some years ago for Geordie. However, it's going to do for here until I can justify buying a new one. All right, well, it's going to be immensely annoying washing dishes underneath this very low spout, but less annoying than it has been. And there we go, hot and cold running water. It's just such a treat. Now, it's painfully obvious to all of you that this is a very interim install. Many of the techniques were actually approaching shoddy. However, I had all the components, and because I live aboard, it was really nice to just be able to have hot and cold running water for a while. Most of the system, in fact, just about all of it, will be done differently when the boat advances a little bit. But in the meantime, so nice. All right, I gotta pack and head off to the airport first thing in the morning. More on this in just a minute. Welcome to the Travels with Geordie Beer of the Week, coming to you this week from beautiful Inner Harbor, Victoria, British Columbia. Let's get to the beer. This is Yellow Dog's Hazy IPA, known as High Five, and well, I've had a few of these before. I'm incredibly fond of them. Cheers. It's been kind of a funny week, trying to figure out what to get done this week in anticipation of going away tomorrow to see my daughters out east. I have one daughter, Caitlin, who you may know, who lives in Boston or near thereabouts, and one daughter, Erin, who you've met, who lives in Halifax or thereabouts. Anyway, I'm really looking forward to seeing them both on a little bit of turbidity in the bottom of that. All right, looking forward to seeing them both in the coming couple of weeks. Cheers to them and cheers to you. Oh, you can tell it's a hazy, and if you know me, you know I love a hazy. That's actually just brilliant. Okay, let's get to the paperwork because there's a bit of it. 2 weeks ago, again, apologies for missing last week, more of that in a minute. 2 weeks ago, winner was Karen Yates. Congratulations, Karen, and get a hold of me and make sure you get your t-shirt. I'd like to thank and very, very grateful for 4 new Patreons that have come on in the last little while. And they are G. King, Ralph Sark, Nicholas Scott, and Michael Wilcox. And cheers to all. Now, that last name, Michael Wilcox, very, very interesting gentleman. Also the fine gentleman who gifted me this fiddle recently. Not only did he gift it to me, he restores fiddles, and this is a fiddle, perhaps I should say violin in his case, is a violin that he recently restored and very kindly asked me if I would like it. And I don't play, as you can tell, but I can noodle a little bit as I can with few instruments, and well, he very, very kindly sent it to me along with a couple of other goodies to go with it, and I'm so grateful. Michael, thank you ever, ever so much. Cheers. I will endeavor to create something reasonable to play for you on here. I'd also like to thank 2 kind folks that supported the show through PayPal last week, and they are Neil Gower and Ray Linus, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. Thanks ever so much to both of you. Cheers. Oh my gosh, it is so great to be able to give you guys a show again. I felt terrible not making the show last week. But with the truck dead and a bit marooned, I just really didn't have an opportunity to put anything together that I thought you might enjoy. I did, however, spend a good chunk of a day trying to write another There'll Be No Episode Today tune, and I was going to do it on the fiddle, and I actually wrote the whole tune, so next time there's no episode, I may be able to do a reasonable job of recording that and getting that out for you. Anyway, I do want to thank one other fellow that sent me something absolutely marvelous. This is a vintage Flagstaff bass, very much like perhaps the one that you can see here holding up the flag on poem. And it was sent to me by a fine fellow that I met at one of the boat festivals, Mark Roberts. And he had actually saved this from a boat that was being scrapped back in Eastern Canada some time ago from a boat called Shamrock. And I think that's just marvelous to think that it will carry on, and it will be either the staff on Geordie, or it will carry a spare staff on Geordie on the upper helm for flying not necessarily signal flags, but perhaps flags of courtesy. Anyway, very, very excited about that. Thank you ever so much, Mark. All you folks need now is a word of the week, and well, I've already let it out that I'm gonna go see my daughters tomorrow, so I'd like this week's word of the week to be daughters or either sons. So tell us a little story about your daughters or sons, or what it's like to be someone's daughter or son. Cheers. See you next week. Can't wait to see you, girls. Is it Mr. and Mrs. Hambridge?
It's us. We were by the tree. Peter.
Welcome to Boston.
Love it. New